If you will, take Bibles and turn to Acts chapter 5. I want to begin our lesson this evening by looking at verses 14 through 16. 14 through 16 of Acts chapter 5. And all the more believers in the Lord, multitudes of men and women were constantly added to their number, to such an extent that they even carried the sick out into the streets and laid them on cots and pallets, so that when Peter came by, at least his shadow might fall on any one of them. Also the people from the cities in the vicinity of Jerusalem were coming together, bringing people who were sick or afflicted with unclean spirits, and they were all being healed. Jesus said in his lifetime to his disciples, greater works would they do than he had done himself. I don't think he particularly had reference to miraculous works they would do, but rather that they would be offering to the world something he could not offer in his lifetime, and that is salvation from sins through his own blood, because it had not been shed yet. But there are a couple of occasions where miracles worked by the disciples were as impressive and magnificent as some of the miracles that Jesus himself worked. This is one of those cases. I remember that people in Jesus' lifetime thought that there was an aura of power about him, such that if they could just get close to him, they might be able to touch that power. We will probably recall most readily in that context the story of the woman who had the issue of blood, who was in a crowd when Jesus was walking through the city, who said to herself, if I could just touch the hem of his garment, I might be healed. And she does touch the garment. Just the hem of his garment. I mean, think about that. The parallel to that would be somebody thinking that there was so much power in a modern day individual that if they could just touch the cuff of their pants, they might be endowed with some of that power. And she was healed. Jesus even makes the comment, who touched me? And the disciples respond, Lord, in this crowd, you want to know who touched you? People bumping, jostling all around. And Jesus said, no, but someone touched me in a different way. And the woman admitted, and when she did, she also claimed the miracle that had made her well. But in Jesus' lifetime, I don't know of anybody who said, if I could just have his shadow pass over me, I will be healed. But that's what I read here. That Peter had such a reputation as a healer of those who were ill and those who were sick, that it says they even carried the sick into the streets, laid them on cots and pallets alongside the street, so that when Peter came by, at least his shadow might fall on any one of them. Imagine that scene. Imagine what went through the minds of those people. Someone has a sick grandmother or mother or son or daughter or husband or wife, and they're so sick they can't get out of their beds. And so the family decides, we've got to find a healing. Let us take our loved one to Peter. But the crowds are big around Peter. We'll never be able to get close enough to him. He's in such a rush. He's all the time moving here and there. He's teaching in the temple and teaching in this place and that place. Yeah, but you know what? Tomorrow he's going to the temple. Tomorrow he's going to this place to preach. He does it every day. If we can just get there about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if we can get on this certain street and know that the shadow falls on the right-hand side of that street, when people walk by because of where the sun is, let's lay our loved one in the street. Lay them there. Not on a sidewalk. No sidewalks in these cities. Of course, no danger of being hit by a bus or a car or anything either, just walking traffic. But let's lay our loved one in the street, and maybe when Peter walks by, his shadow might fall across them. Just for an instant, a fleeting instant, his shadow touched them, and they be healed. You talk about faith. You talk about faith. That is great faith. You say, yeah, but that was just superstition, Ralph. It didn't work. Sure it did. It says so. It says they were all being healed in verse 16. The people who came in faith that Peter's shadow would touch them were being healed. What is it in a shadow? Shadow. What is our shadow? Scientific definition. It is a dark image cast by a solid body intercepting light. That's all it is. I've got some shadows around here. I see one to my right. It's coming from the light. Wow, I just lost all of you there for a second. Coming from the light that is up here to my left. That light would normally shine down onto the floor. I am a solid body, very solid body. I move into that light and my shadow appears. It is the dark image cast by a body intercepting light. That's what it is. We all have shadows. All of us. I want to talk this evening with you about your shadow. Not the dark image cast by a solid body intercepting light, but your life as it is cast by light. Your influence over others. All of us cast shadows. All of us are revealed by the light. The only question is not whether you have a shadow or not, but how long is your shadow? How far does it extend? Now for us in the scientific realm, the farther down the light is, the longer the shadow that is cast. But I'm talking about your influence on others. How long is your shadow? If Peter went near the end of the day and his shadow was very long, imagine all the people that were healed as that shadow swept over those bodies. But if it was around noontime, you'd have to practically put somebody under Peter's feet for his shadow to have been cast over them. See my point? Yes? No? See it? Okay. The back section over here evidently didn't see that. I didn't see any heads nodding at all back there. We need to go back over this again with all of you in the back. Now they're all going, no, don't go over it again. Good. I need your feedback. That's very helpful. So let's talk about the idea of influence. We all are influences. We can be positive influences. We can influence for good. Let your light so shine before men that they see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. That's a good influence. We can be a negative influence. Proverbs chapter 1, my son, if sinners entice you and they say, come, let us lie in wait for blood, and we'll gain spoil and split it among ourselves. If they entice you, do not go with them, my son, for their feet run to bloodshed. Negative influence. You can be a neutral influence. I'm kind of impressed by just a short story told in John chapter 21, verse 3, where after Jesus has been risen from the dead, the disciples aren't real sure what they should do. In chapter 21, verse 3, it says, and Peter said, I'm going fishing. And the other disciples said, well, we'll go with you. That's influence. Peter didn't say, hey guys, I got an idea. Let's all go fishing. What did he say? We'll go do that. He didn't say that. He just said, I'm doing this. And by his actions, he influenced the others to do the same. That's a neutral influence. Neither good nor bad. We can be neutral, we can be positive, we can be negative influences for others. The real question is, how long is your shadow? How much influence do you have over others? What kind of shadow do you cast in your life? I got 4 points for you this evening. Here they are. Number 1, influence is unconscious for most of us. Number 2, influence is one of the greatest powers on earth. Number 3, influence is almost immortal. And point number 4 will be influence may be irrevocable. When we get to the 4th point, you'll know we're done. Point number 1. Influence is unconscious for the most part. Like a shadow, we don't think about it. I walk every day. I never think about my shadow. I rarely do. When I was a kid, I thought about it more than I do as an adult. When I was a kid, I'd see it and I go, oh, that's kind of neat. And then I'd make faces with it or put ears on my head or try to stretch a funny way or stick my stomach out and make myself look bigger than I was or try to stretch to gain different perspectives of myself. Or we'd step on each other's shadows. Did you ever play that game? Stepping on somebody else's shadow. But for the most part, we operate every day. All of you right now are casting shadows, but you're not probably thinking about it too much. I'm talking now about literal shadows. Our influence is the same way. For the most part, we just don't think about it. We influence people all the time. We just don't think about it very often. I may have unconsciously influenced some people this week by my statements about certain kinds of foods I like or don't like. That's probably a good influence. Nobody ought to be eating liver anyway, but there may be some whose parents thought, I'll get my kids to eat liver if I could just get Ralph Walker to quit influencing them to the contrary. It was never really my intent to influence anybody else regarding eating. That's almost an unconscious thing that we do. And we can toy with it, just like I can toy with my physical shadow. I've got another one over here. I can play with that, but for the most part, it is what I am on an everyday basis. Daily, steady, unconscious. Now, I say that to you because this is important. You can wake up one day and say, I'm going to be different than I am. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to be something different. You can decide, I'm going to be a good influence on other people. And that works for a while, but then most of the time we just slip back into our old patterns. How many of us have made resolutions late in the night? Have you ever done that? You're laying in your bed and you're thinking about your life and you say, you know, tomorrow, I'm going to start doing better. We lay there and we make decisions. Oh, the ideal, perfect people we become late at night when we lay in our beds. Don't we do that? We become you know what? Tomorrow morning, I'm getting up early. I'm going to get up with a smile on my face. I'm going to take a shower early, and I'm going to get out and do a long walk, and then I'm going to read my Bible, and I'm going to get in there. I'm going to clean up the kitchen and surprise my family, and I'm going to cook breakfast for them, and I'm going to do this and that. I'm going to go to work early, and I'm going to put in a good day's work. We lay awake at night. I don't know if you're like me, and I think a lot of you are because I see your heads nodding. We make wonderful resolutions in the night, and the alarm goes off in the morning, and what happens? We are what we are. We just go back to being what we were before. We get out of bed grumbling. We stagger into the kitchen and mess up the dishes and never do clean them up. We tell the kids there's Pop-Tarts or cereal, fix your own breakfast. We stagger off to work and we produce about what we normally produce at work. We come back home, we go to bed, we say, that was a terrible day today. I'm going to do better tomorrow. But rarely do we do that. See, we have to make a conscious effort to change our life long term. Not just tomorrow I'm going to be better. Because I'll tell you something, folks, listen, it's the spirit of our lives, not the spurts, that make the difference. We may be better for even a day, but it's the tenor of our lives. It's not the minor things that we do. It's the spirit, not the spurts. It's the casual conversation, not the speeches, that really identify what we are. Do you know what I mean by that? I mean, we are what we are on a daily basis. It's the way we talk all the time. I can write an intelligent speech. I can write words I don't even understand and put them all together in such a way that people think, that guy's a scholar. But they'd know differently if they talked to me on a daily basis. Well, it's my daily basis conversation that really makes a difference in people's life. You know what it is? It's the shadow. It's what we are. It's our influence. When I was a little boy, I remember reading first the nursery rhyme that said, I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me. And what can be the use of him is more than I can see. Now, there may be more to that nursery rhyme than I just cited for you. And if there is, I hope somebody after this evening is over will tell me. It's the only lines I know from that nursery rhyme when I was a kid. But that is a true statement. See, I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me. It's what I am all the time. My influence isn't what I want it to be for 5 minutes out of the day, folks. My influence, my shadow is what I am all the time. It's what I am in the car. It's what I am at work. It's what I am in the restaurant. It's what I am when I go buy groceries or walk through a store. It's what I am when I come home with my family. I have this shadow that goes in and out with me. And that's true for every one of us. And it's there. I don't have to say, oh my goodness, I'm so embarrassed. I left my shadow at home. I didn't bring it with me. Or walking along and suddenly say, well, now where did my shadow go? I left it. Where did I leave it? I was in a store. It might be there. I was in the car. I think I left it in the car. Let me go back and get it. The shadow goes in and out with us. It is what we are all the time. Listen, Christian, your influence is influence everywhere you go. It's not just what you are when you come together with the saints. It's what you are when you go out from the saints. It's what you are when you encounter people that are difficult. It's what you are when you encounter an officer of the law. It's what you are when you encounter bad people. It's what you are when you encounter irascible neighbors or people that are difficult to work with in the school system. Your influence is every day in and out with you. Second, our influence, we may not realize it, is one of the greatest powers on earth. We sometimes use the expression, he's afraid of his own shadow. What we mean by that somebody's so timid they're even frightened of that which is closest to them. Let me tell you, in the context of what we're talking about tonight, that is true. Of course we're afraid of our shadows. It is powerful. It influences people. Some people become what they are because of our shadow, not because of what we consciously want them to become, but because of what we influence them to become. I dare say there's not a parent in this audience, not tonight, not this morning, not this afternoon that I've met, not a parent here that would say, I don't want my children to love the Lord. I don't care if they love the Lord or not. I just want them to do what they want to do with their lives. I want them to pursue what will make them happy. And if that's God, that's fine. But if it's not God, that's okay too. I don't think there's a parent in this audience that would say, that's what I believe, Ralph. What you just said, that's what I believe. But unconsciously, that may be what we're telling our children. Unconsciously, we may be telling our children that. Our shadow may be demonstrating that. If we let our work or our pursuit of pleasure or our pursuit of social status or our pursuit of friends, if we let those things get between us and our worship and love of God, what are we telling our children? Are we telling them God is first? I don't think so. If we tell our children, we want you to get a good education, but we're not as concerned about education in the secular things as we are education in the Lord, but then everything in our lives indicates that we're pursuing personally education of this world and its goods, master's degrees, doctor's degrees, and the Lord falls by the wayside, what are we telling our children? What is our influence saying? That's powerful, folks. It's more powerful than what we say. We can talk all day, but people will look at what we are, not what we say. So I suggest to you that we ought to be afraid of our own shadows. Our shadows paint us the way we really are. Sometimes it's like pictures. There are times when I think, Ralph, you don't look so bad the way you are physically. I mean, you're still looking relatively young. You got, those aren't crow's feet around your eyes. Those are laugh lines. You just enjoy life a lot. People know that. And I look at a picture of myself and I think, whew, I'm looking pretty old. And that youthful physique I used to have is gone. It's only when I look at my picture that I see that. I can fool myself but not when I see pictures or videos or when I look at my shadow. My shadow tells a lot about me. You may think, my hair's looking pretty good. You walk down the street, you look at your shadow in front of you and think, my goodness, I'm Medusa. You know, I didn't know it looked that way. Your shadow will reveal what you are, folks. It really tells the story as to what we are in reality. Look at Romans chapter 14 with me, if you would, please. Romans chapter 14. I'm looking at verse 7. For not one of us lives for himself, and not one dies for himself. We don't live in isolation. We don't live in a vacuum. We influence others by what we are. I want to tell you something, folks. Let me make an observation to you. What you do when you come together here influences other people. The way you respond to sermons and songs and prayers and the Lord's Supper, it influences other people. It influences me as a speaker. When I get up to speak, you have no idea how you influence me, and I think Scott would say that, Mark would say that, as preachers who regularly get into the pulpit and preach messages. You influence us by the way you receive the message. If I say something and I'm really excited about it, and I say, this is fascinating, listen to this, folks, and I tell it, and everybody responds by going, When everybody does it, it bothers me. And it makes me think, well, cut that out. Nobody thought that was worth looking at anymore. But when people go, wow, and they turn to the person next to them and go, I didn't know that. And then they look back up with eagerness, tell us more. That makes me enthusiastic. You do that kind of thing, I can preach for hours. Now you'll all, I saw you all go, whoa. Back off, don't get this guy started. But what I'm saying is, you influence others, but not just the speakers. You don't just influence speakers, you influence people next to you on the pews. You influence the people next to you. When you listen to sermons or you're singing and you're singing with great enthusiasm and you're just singing your heart out, people next to you pick up singing. I got to tell you this story because it's a story of influence that ended up being a little bit embarrassing for me. We used to go to high school football games when we lived in North Carolina, and we would go watch Concord High School play football, and every time they played the national anthem, and I'm a very patriotic person, so whenever we all stood for the singing or the playing of the national anthem, I'd always sing. Not very many people would, but I always sang. I always do sing the national anthem. Well, one night I was at a game, and there was a fellow who was one row up from me and just kind of right behind me, and I started out singing the national anthem, and this guy picked up. He started singing with me. So there were two of us singing. Well, I thought that's pretty neat. So because he was singing and he had a pretty nice voice, I thought, well, I'll sing a little louder, you know? Not to overpower him, but I had a partner now. And as I sang louder, he sang louder. Man, by the time we got to the end of that song, we were really belting it out, you know? And the home of the brave. And we were really singing. Well, as soon as we got to the end of that and finished, I turned to him, I stuck my hand out, and he said, he was already reaching for me. He said, I want to tell you something. I have never sung the national anthem at a game like that, but when you sang, you encouraged me to sing, and I feel really good about that. And I said to him, well, you should sing more often. You have a very nice voice. And he said, well, thank you. I promise this is true. You can ask my wife, Paula, who's right here. Like 3 days later, I came to Paula. I said, look at this in the paper. And in the newspaper, there's this guy's picture. And he's moved to Concord, where we were living, so he can work with the community theater. They're really excited because he's going to direct The Sound of Music. Do you know why they're excited about it? He played the part of Rolf in The Sound of Music. Yeah. This guy moves to Concord. And here I'm telling him, you have a very nice voice. Of course he sang, I am 17, going on 18, you know. That's him, the guy. That's the guy. And I'm telling him, you have a very nice voice. But the point is, the point I want to make for you folks, seriously, is I influenced him. I didn't mean to. I didn't say, I'm going to sing a national anthem so other people around me will sing. But I influenced him. And that's powerful. I mean, what we do is a powerful influence for others. No one of us lives to himself or dies to himself. We live in community and we affect other people. Go on and look at some other passages there. Verse 13. Therefore, let us not judge one another anymore, but rather determine this, not to put an obstacle or a stumbling block in a brother's way. You be careful about how you influence people negatively. And finally, verse 15. For if because of food your brother is hurt, you're no longer walking according to love. Do not destroy with your food him for whom Christ died. Wow, we can be that powerful in our influence. I can influence somebody to leave the Lord. You realize that? I mean, you think about that. Here is Jesus hanging on a cross, begging people to come to him and follow him. I can influence them in such a way that I can turn them away from Jesus. I can do that with my life. I can do that if I'm a hypocrite. I can do that if I'm ugly to other people. My influence is powerful. You think of how other people have influenced you. Not just your decision to become a Christian, whether that was parents or grandparents or a friend or a neighbor or a person who passed by and just happened to give you information about Jesus. But think about all the people who've influenced you to be what you are. Influence is powerful. Powerful. How long is your shadow? How long is your shadow? Influence is almost immortal. It lives well beyond our lives. Tennyson said, we are part of all we meet. My grandmother, who's no longer alive, is an influence in my life. My grandmother obeyed the gospel of Jesus Christ. She and her children, my mother, one of 7 children, became Christians. And I became a Christian because my parents influenced my life. But I'll go further. My grandmother influenced the lives of my daughters because they too became Christians. That's 3 generations removed from her generation, and she continues to influence people. But I want to tell you something, and it's not to embarrass anybody in this audience, but my grandmother influenced Mark Broyles, who never knew her. Because my best friend, who's here in this audience, became a Christian as a result of the influence of our family. And then his sons have become children of God, and he married a godly woman. And all of those influences go on. It's not the one person who made all the difference, but it's the cumulative effect of our influence in other people's lives that make us what we are. Our influence, our shadows are almost immortal. It is the means by which the gospel is most often transmitted. The ongoing influence of disciples. So I can live such a way in this day that I can affect the lives of people 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road. Isn't that awesome? I mean, to think about what we can do with our influence. I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me. And what can be the use of him is more than I can see. Exactly. It is more than I can see. I may never know what influence I have and my wife has on our children's grandchildren. I may not live to see them come to this earth, but hopefully our influence together, Paula's and mine, has been such that our daughters will raise their children to be disciples of Jesus Christ, and they will raise their children to be disciples of Jesus Christ. What can be the use of him is more than I can ever see. We influence people we don't even know, that we will never meet. And we do that by our lives. How long is your shadow? We influence people who watch us, who hear us, who witness us. We die, but our influence lives on. And that brings us to our last point. This is a serious one. Our influence may be irrevocable. We may never be able to change or alter what our influence is in the lives of others. You can change yourself. You can change your ideas. You can change your future. but you may not reverse the effect you had on others. When I was in college, I got involved with a retro group that sang 50s hits. This was in the 70s. And it is amazing to me that when we go back for class reunions, 10, 20-year class reunions, people still say, "You're still singing those old 50s hits?" I don't sing those songs much anymore. But my influence is such that people remember me for that. Now, that's a neutral influence at best. But sometimes we're negative influences on others. And we can change ourselves, but we may not be able to change a perception that others have of us. Look with me very quickly at 1 Kings chapter 21. Go back to the Old Testament. I want to show you something. 1 Kings chapter 21. Here's the great danger for you and me. I'm looking at verses 25 through 29. 1 Kings chapter 21, verses 25 through 29. Surely there was no one like Ahab, who sold himself to do evil in the sight of the Lord, because Jezebel, his wife, incited him. See her influence on his life? Now go on. He acted very abominably in following idols, according to all that the Amorites had done, whom the Lord cast out before the sons of Israel. See the influence of the Amorites in his life? Now go on. It came about that when Ahab heard these words, that he tore his clothes. And he put on sackcloth, and he fasted, and he lay in sackcloth, and he went about despondently. And then the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, "Do you see how Ahab has humbled himself before me? Because he's humbled himself before me, I will not bring the evil in his days, but I will bring the evil upon his house in his son's days." Now you'd think with Ahab having turned his life around and tried to do better at the end of his life, you'd think, well, that's a pretty remarkable turnaround. Surely that must have influenced his family. When they saw the change in his life, they too would have changed. But look at chapter 22, verses 51 through 53. Chapter 22, verses 51 through 53. Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel in Samaria in the 17th year of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah. And he reigned 2 years over Israel. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. He walked in the way of his father, and in the way of his mother, and in the way of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who caused Israel to sin. Do you know who that Jeroboam is? That's the very first king of Israel, hundreds of years before him. That king influenced Ahaziah. And it says in verse 53, "So he served Baal and worshipped him and provoked the Lord God of Israel to anger, according to all that his father had done." Now here's the downer in our message tonight. You can live in such a way that you can lead your children to curse God and die. And before you die, you may change your life and turn it around, and you may be better in your life than you were before, but your influence may continue to propel your children away from God. How long is your shadow? How much influence do you have over others? And how conscious are you of what your shadow can do to others? I wonder if Peter thought every day as he went out, I want to make sure my shadow is long enough to heal all the people on the sides of the street here. And I wonder how much we think about how we influence everybody, not just in the family of God here, but the people you're going to influence when you go out of this place tonight. For I'll tell you, what is true of me is true of you. I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me. And what can be the use of him is much more than I can ever see. Be aware of that. And may your shadow bring healing to others, and life to others, and joy to others. May your influence be only for good and not for evil all the days of your life. Maybe you need to turn things around in your life tonight and make your shadow more effective for the Lord and less effective for darkness. If there's anything at all that we can do to help you tonight to be a better influence for Jesus Christ, why don't you share that with the congregation here? If tonight you need to cleanse yourself of your sinfulness and become an influence for good as you decide to become a disciple of Jesus Christ, why not start reshaping your shadow even tonight so that it can lengthen into the last years of your life only as an influence for good and for Jesus? If there's anything at all we can do to help you, you need to come to the front. You need to share that with the congregation here. And do that right now, won't you, while we stand and sing this song.